Sometimes you laugh the loudest while silently feeling invisible beside everyone around you. People often misunderstand this kind of loneliness because, from the outside, your life may appear completely normal. You answer messages, attend gatherings, smile in photos, and sit beside people every day while secretly feeling emotionally disconnected from all of it. Some people call you dramatic for feeling lonely around friends. Others assume you are ungrateful, distant, antisocial, or emotionally needy. They see your silence as attitude, your exhaustion as laziness, and your withdrawal as rejection rather than emotional overwhelm. But loneliness is not always the absence of people. Sometimes it is the absence of emotional safety. Sometimes it is the exhausting feeling of being physically surrounded while mentally carrying experiences, emotions, and thoughts nobody around you truly notices. Many people who feel this kind of loneliness have spent years adapting themselves to other people's expectations. They learn how to appear okay, how to stay agreeable, how to avoid becoming a burden, while slowly disconnecting from their own emotional reality underneath. Over time, social interaction can begin to feel strangely performative. You laugh at the correct moments, respond politely, and maintain conversations while quietly feeling detached inside, almost like watching yourself participate from a distance instead of genuinely belonging there. This is why people can leave crowded rooms feeling emptier than before they arrived, because sometimes being unseen around others hurts more deeply than being alone by yourself. The nervous system experiences emotional disconnection as something heavy, confusing, and deeply exhausting. What looks like emotional distance is often emotional survival. Many people are not withdrawing because they dislike others. They are withdrawing because constant emotional masking slowly drains the mind, body, and nervous system until connection itself begins to feel tiring. Psychologically, this kind of loneliness often begins long before someone notices it consciously. The brain is constantly scanning social environments for emotional safety, belonging, understanding, and connection. When those needs repeatedly go unmet, the nervous system quietly adapts around disappointment. Neuroscience shows that emotional isolation activates many of the same brain regions involved in physical pain. This explains why loneliness does not simply feel sad. It can feel physically heavy, mentally exhausting, and strangely difficult to explain even to people closest to you. Many people experiencing this loneliness still function normally on the outside. They go to work, attend school, answer calls, and maintain routines while internally feeling emotionally detached, overstimulated, or deeply exhausted by constant social performance. The mind begins splitting attention between participating socially and monitoring itself constantly. You start wondering whether anyone genuinely cares, whether your presence matters, or whether people only know the version of you that feels emotionally filtered. This creates a form of emotional hyperawareness that quietly drains working memory and mental energy. Conversations become harder to stay present in because part of the brain is always scanning for rejection, misunderstanding, disconnection, or signs that emotional closeness is unsafe. For people with anxiety, depression, ADHD, chronic stress, or unresolved emotional wounds, this experience can intensify even further. The nervous system becomes overloaded more easily, making ordinary social situations feel emotionally demanding instead of naturally comforting or energizing. Sometimes the loneliness appears in small, ordinary moments, sitting with friends while feeling emotionally absent, scrolling through messages without replying because interaction suddenly feels overwhelming, smiling during conversations while secretly wishing someone would notice your exhaustion without needing explanations. The brain slowly learns to associate connection with emotional labor. Instead of relaxation, social interaction can start feeling like another environment where you must manage expectations, monitor reactions, and carefully shape yourself into someone easier for other people to understand. This is why many lonely people become quieter over time. Not because they have nothing inside them, but because explaining invisible emotional exhaustion repeatedly, without feeling understood, can become its own form of loneliness. For some people, this loneliness begins in childhood environments where emotions were dismissed, ignored, or misunderstood. When vulnerability repeatedly feels unsafe, the mind learns to hide authentic feelings automatically, even around people who genuinely care later in life. Others develop it after years of constantly being emotionally available for everyone else. They become the listener, the helper, the emotionally dependable person, while quietly realizing nobody ever asks how they are coping beneath their calm appearance. Sometimes loneliness grows from repeated experiences of feeling emotionally different. You may think more deeply, feel emotions more intensely, or notice social dynamics others ignore. Over time, this creates the painful feeling of being surrounded yet psychologically disconnected from everyone nearby. Even busy environments can begin feeling emotionally cold. Restaurants filled with conversation, classrooms full of people, family gatherings with laughter, all of it can strangely intensify loneliness when your inner world feels invisible inside those spaces. Ordinary objects slowly become emotional symbols without you noticing. An unread message starts feeling like proof you do not matter. A group photo becomes evidence that everyone else belongs more naturally than you do. Even silence inside your room begins feeling emotionally louder at night. The nervous system eventually grows tired from carrying constant emotional alertness. You may stop reaching out first, avoid deeper conversations, or isolate yourself without fully understanding why. Emotional exhaustion slowly transforms connection into something that feels risky rather than comforting. Many people blame themselves for this experience. They wonder whether they are too sensitive, too distant, too complicated, or somehow emotionally defective. Shame quietly convinces them that their loneliness exists because something inside them is fundamentally wrong. But prolonged loneliness often creates emotional paralysis rather than clarity. The more disconnected someone feels, the harder it becomes to initiate connection naturally. Even replying to kind messages can suddenly feel mentally overwhelming because the nervous system already feels overloaded. This creates a painful cycle where people crave connection deeply while simultaneously feeling exhausted by the effort required to maintain it. They begin missing people while avoiding them at the same time, which creates even more confusion, guilt, and emotional isolation. Eventually, some people stop expecting emotional understanding altogether. They continue showing up physically while emotionally retreating inward, carrying entire conversations, fears, memories, and struggles privately, because invisibility starts feeling safer than disappointment. What makes this loneliness even heavier is that shame often becomes attached to it. People tell themselves they should feel grateful because they have friends, family, classmates, coworkers, or people constantly around them. So instead of expressing the loneliness, they hide it deeper. But emotional pain rarely disappears when it is invalidated. In many cases, criticism actually intensifies nervous system stress. The more someone feels judged for struggling emotionally, the more guarded, disconnected, and internally exhausted they become over time. This is why forcing yourself to just socialize more does not always solve the problem. Human connection is not measured by physical proximity alone. The nervous system responds more strongly to emotional safety, authenticity, understanding, and the feeling of being psychologically accepted. When people feel pressured to constantly perform happiness, productivity, or emotional strength, they slowly lose connection with their authentic emotional state. Eventually, they stop asking themselves what they genuinely feel because survival becomes more automatic than self-awareness. Psychologically, the brain also resists environments where authenticity previously led to embarrassment, rejection, or emotional neglect. This creates emotional self-protection that can look confusing from the outside. Someone may deeply want closeness while unconsciously fearing the vulnerability required for it. That contradiction is important to understand compassionately. Humans are not emotionally simple creatures. Sometimes, the same person craving connection is also terrified of emotional exposure because previous experiences taught their nervous system that closeness could become emotionally painful. This is why black and white thinking becomes harmful here. Loneliness does not automatically mean someone is broken, antisocial, weak, or incapable of love. Often it means their emotional system has been overwhelmed for too long without enough genuine understanding or emotional rest. Many emotionally intelligent people experience this silently because they spend years observing others carefully while neglecting themselves internally. They become skilled at reading rooms, managing tension, comforting people, and maintaining emotional harmony while quietly feeling emotionally unseen themselves. And strangely, the more emotionally self-aware someone becomes, the harder shallow connection can feel. Small talk begins feeling emotionally empty when the mind secretly longs for sincerity, warmth, emotional honesty, and the quiet relief of finally feeling understood without excessive explanation. None of this makes you difficult to love. It simply means your nervous system may be carrying emotional experiences that were never fully processed, validated, or safely shared. Loneliness is sometimes less about lacking people and more about lacking emotional refuge. Healing from this kind of loneliness usually does not begin with becoming more impressive, productive, or socially perfect. It often begins much smaller and quieter than that. The nervous system heals through safety, gentleness, consistency, and emotionally honest connection. Many people are not broken, they are emotionally overstretched. Their minds have spent years adapting to stress, emotional masking, overstimulation, disappointment, or chronic self-monitoring without enough opportunities to fully rest emotionally around other human beings. This is why aggressive self-improvement sometimes makes lonely people feel worse instead of better. Constantly trying to fix yourself can quietly reinforce the belief that your emotional pain exists because you are fundamentally defective rather than emotionally exhausted. Real healing often starts with reducing emotional pressure instead of increasing it. Small moments matter more than people realize. Honest conversations, rest without guilt, one emotionally safe friendship, a quiet walk without overstimulation. Tiny experiences of emotional softness slowly retrain the nervous system. Sometimes healing means learning to stop performing emotional strength every moment. It means allowing yourself to admit you feel disconnected instead of minimizing your pain because other people have it worse. Emotional honesty creates space where genuine connection can finally begin forming again. It also helps to understand that connection does not always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it appears gradually through repeated small experiences of feeling emotionally seen. A conversation where you do not feel judged. A person who notices your silence gently instead of demanding explanations. The nervous system changes slowly through repetition. Tiny emotionally safe moments teach the brain that closeness is not always dangerous, draining, or disappointing. Over time, connection can begin feeling less like emotional labor and more like emotional rest. This is why healing should be approached gently rather than forcefully. People struggling with deep loneliness often do not need harsher discipline. They need environments, relationships, and routines that reduce internal overload instead of constantly intensifying it. Even very small actions matter psychologically. Drinking water before isolating completely, replying to one message instead of none, sitting outside for 10 quiet minutes, letting yourself experience one honest emotional moment without immediately criticizing yourself afterward. Little by little, the nervous system begins loosening its grip on emotional survival mode. And somewhere inside those small, quiet changes, people slowly rediscover something they thought disappeared long ago, the feeling that maybe they deserve connection without needing to constantly earn it. Maybe your loneliness was never proof that you were unlovable. Maybe it was the emotional echo of carrying too much invisibly for too long, while the world kept mistaking your quietness for emptiness instead of exhaustion. Like a house with every light turned on but no warmth inside, some people learn how to appear socially present while privately feeling emotionally distant from themselves, from others, and from the life unfolding quietly around them. But even the nervous system can relearn safety slowly. Human beings are deeply adaptive. The same mind that learned emotional protection through disappointment can also gradually rediscover connection through gentleness, honesty, patience, and emotionally safe experiences repeated over time. One meaningful conversation can soften years of emotional isolation. One person listening carefully can interrupt months of feeling invisible. Sometimes healing begins the moment someone finally feels understood instead of analyzed, corrected, or emotionally rushed. So if you have been carrying loneliness quietly around other people, let this be a reminder that your experience is real. You are not weak for feeling disconnected. You are not failing because your emotional needs run deeper than surface level interaction. Some souls simply become tired from surviving emotionally without enough places to fully rest. And healing often begins when people stop asking themselves why they cannot fit everywhere and start asking where they finally feel emotionally safe enough to breathe naturally. If this video made you feel understood, you can share your experience gently in the comments. Someone else reading your words may realize they are not alone inside feelings they have struggled to explain for years. And if you want more emotionally honest psychology videos like this, you can like, subscribe, and stay for the next conversation. Sometimes understanding ourselves more deeply becomes the first quiet step toward feeling less alone. Until then, take care of your nervous system gently tonight. The world can feel unbearably loud sometimes, but somewhere beneath all that noise, there is still a version of you slowly learning that connection was never something you had to deserve.